Another Founder Wisdom podcast, guys, community edition. We have Melanie Aronson with us. She is founder at Panion. Melanie, can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about Panion?
Sure. Hi, I'm Melanie, and Panion is a community management platform helping bring more meaningful conversations, meaningful connections to online communities. So we're really people first, focused on trying to network and help people find each other inside of communities rather than just post anonymous content or communities that feel more like a social media platform. We're really trying to mimic the way that you socialize in real life communities, but having an online presence, sometimes even a hybrid presence where you have a community that's both online and offline.
Right. Why did you decided to start that company? I think it was a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, it was in 2018. So we actually started a different type of company. We were a B2C platform helping people integrate into new countries, cities, places that they moved to. So I actually had moved to Sweden in 2014, I believe. And it was at the time of a huge migration influx into Europe. And so I was meeting all these people like myself who had just relocated, and was really hard to rebuild your social circle again. You know, you're a new person in a new culture and a new place. And as an adult, I think it's harder to make new friends because you know yourself better and you know kind of what you want in a friend, and it's like you almost wish you could just run a search and find the exact person you want to be friends with. And so I had this idea to kind of create something like that where you could tag yourself with different words that described you and find people that you could relate to wherever you went. And then COVID happened and suddenly this app for meeting people in person was deemed dangerous and not acceptable at the moment, even while wearing a mask, I guess. So I kind of thought, okay, I have to pivot. I want to stay alive here. And I transitioned into community building. And so we took everything that we learned in this social platform, the keywords and the really trying to match people in a way that was significant for people. And we were very like against this concept of posting content and content and content. So like in the original version, it was just about people and their profiles and filtering and searching and finding them and meeting offline. And so we want to take the same concept and bring it into larger communities that already had an online presence, and help facilitate their online and their offline networking. And so that evolved into like a full on community platform that also included like event management and discussion groups and all these other things that kind of everybody needed to be able to run a community on one platform. So, but we still have this focus on people being the core of what a community is, even if you're online.
Right. On my side, for example, I'm developing these mastermind groups, which are for people big. Um, Anyone that follows me on LinkedIn for my contrarian content, I'd like them to be part of my community, for example. What platform should I use? Because for my mastermind, it's a Zoom call on a monthly basis. And I have a LinkedIn group, for example. What else would I need to add there to make people's experience better and keep on adding more value to my community?
I mean, I think it depends on how the direction that you want to go. So when I think there's like a misconception that we ran into a lot, which was that people kind of thought, okay, I can get this tool and the community will run itself. And community management requires like real people, like, in the trenches, leading conversations and maybe even kind of problem solving when community members don't necessarily get along. Like there's a lot of work, and then there's content creation in the sense that you start these conversations and keep them moving forward. And so I think it depends like what the capacity is and like what the end goal is. Ultimately, in community building and management, you want to provide value. There's so many communities out there now, so the ones that we stick with are the ones that give us add value to our lives in some way. And that really depends on what people are looking for or looking to get out of whatever you're offering. So I think like follow-on communities are really helpful, like a platform where you can manage conversations and events and everything in one. It fits a certain type of community. And usually the most successful communities are the ones that already have all of those pieces, and they're on lots of different platforms and they just want one place to do everything. So in your case, I think maybe I would need to dig a little deeper and know a little bit more about like what the goal for you is in like you have these classes, and then where do you want to go next? Do you want people to be able to talk to each other, for example, and keep the conversation going? Do you want to be the one that's there kind of facilitating things? Because I think each platform can help you go a different direction with your community.
I feel that, for example, listening to you and mentioning value, newsletters are quite good to constantly add value, but they kind of lack the interactivity. Now, do you want to only interact with the person that writes this newsletter, or do you want to interact with the community around that? Is the question. For example, I listened to this podcast called My First Million. It's quite good. It's on YouTube, and they're developing a lot of fans. And sometimes the fans, it's like, hey, you also listen to My First Million? Oh, well, let's be friends. We can be a good mental fit just because we both like this podcast, or the All In podcast. So I guess at this point, it's giving the fans a platform to meet with one another. But what I've seen also is that these platforms given to the fans are quite chaotic. Facebook groups are great, but Facebook's kind of outdated. I'd prefer LinkedIn. If LinkedIn groups had some kind of a version, LinkedIn groups are bad. They don't have the same features as Facebook groups. Facebook groups are not like a fire hose, because the fire hose that I see is like Slack groups or WhatsApp groups, in which like there's every second there's a new message, and that's way too much. So what do you recommend as a platform to not to still have the Facebook feature? Facebook, what's cool is that everyone's on Facebook. You can add them pretty easily. There's a bunch of features, functions there. What are people seeking? I guess they're seeking to be at a place where they spend a lot of their time, which is why I mentioned LinkedIn. But then LinkedIn groups are kind of associated with like old people with like millions of connections trying to network, the lions of LinkedIn. So what should I do here? Like, where should I start this group if it's not on LinkedIn or Facebook?
So you have like similar to Panion, you have like a lot of different community platforms, and they all offer different things. So I think like some of them allow you to incorporate your courses directly into the platform. Others allow you to use audio if you say have a podcast and you want to go more in the audio direction. So I think it's these kind of custom community platforms that allow you to kind of have this small space off of a social media platform that's very branded. And so what we were doing at Panion was allowing you to integrate things into your website, to add your own branding, and to make it feel like, okay, this is just a part of my website, but it's backed by some sort of, third-party community. Most people wouldn't even know joining that was backed by, some SaaS platform. And so it feels like you're entering your website, and then you just have like the same website, which is just a community space on your website. So it is about branding and creating your own little online intimate space for your members. And I think it's a double-edged sword, right? Like LinkedIn, Facebook, people are using it all the time. Like you can acquire a lot of new customers or new members there. Whereas on these platforms, people aren't going to find new communities necessarily through those platforms. They will find you through your website and then hop into your community. So it kind of depends if you have the audience already, if you're looking for more acquisition, and also how branded you want things to be. And is the priority the conversation, or is the priority, like you said, you're offering courses and you're or is it courses, or is it more like these like community chat groups, Zoom discussions? But either way, I think it sounds like they're more intimate, and in a sense it could be nice to be off of these massive social platforms, which are not, like, they're the opposite of intimate. And but yeah, so it depends. I think the other thing is that, like I said, people are inundated with these different kinds of online communities they're being invited to, so we really have to stand out because we're competing for everyone's attention here, and people have very little time these days. So it's, there's pros and cons for both, I think.
And what features are people looking for? Because, for example, if I start a LinkedIn conversation with 4 message, people know that they won't get inundated with messages. And in the mastermind context, and members should message every now and then, either to ask a question and seek a potential solution, or just straight up add value. Hey guys, have you tried this software? What features are people looking for in a community? Is it just sharing value? Is it like meeting sometimes physically with other communities members? Like, how could I add more values to their life in a business context, right? It's a business CEO mastermind.
I think it really depends, but I think that people are a little bit tired of like reading articles and getting this very generic information, and I see a lot of value in these very small groups where people can actually face to face talk, and whether that's in person or in Zoom. I know there's some Zoom fatigue right now, and I think people would love to be in person, but it really depends. Location is obviously a limitation, but I think that the real connection to other people is what people, I mean, we're naturally instinctively built that way, right? So whether it's business or something else, we feel the value in connecting to someone who gets us and who can potentially help us grow or move in a new direction. And I think there's just so much power in face to face, and people feeling like, wow, I've made a new connection, and this had meaning, and they understand me. And I think that that's why during the pandemic all of these video conference and community platforms exploded, because people were craving this and they didn't have it during the pandemic. And I think that that shows that we are social beings, and we can, I think a lot of, and I mean, I looked at a lot of statistics around loneliness, especially for my first product. And I think that, and there's a lot around loneliness and social media. Like, people can feel like they're social and post and have friends that are not really friends, connections, but they still feel lonely. But as soon as you have these face-to-face meaningful moments with other people, it changes. And that can also be on Zoom. I've been in a lot of those supportive calls on Zoom where you really had like this connection with somebody, and I think that that's possible. But I think it is this connection that people are looking for. So I'm not sure that there are specific features, because I think people like to focus on features, but I think it is really this, like, this connection and this feeling like united with other people and helping each other in whatever endeavors that they have, that people are really looking for. And that's kind of how we tried to design our platform, just to enable this in some way, shape, or form, so you at least feel the presence of the people when you're in that community.
Right. Thanks for answering that. And yeah, it's like they're, for example, as entrepreneurs, they're going through tough moments, and you're there for them. So it's like, oh, they were there for me when the going got hard, not only when I was victorious and celebrating and all that. So yeah, I guess that's how you build communities. Is it like a synonym with friendship, kind of community?
I think so. I think you can be part of a community because you share some sort of value or interest or common goal, and you don't necessarily have to be friends, but there is this like common direction, perhaps, or common interest. And I think that, yeah, I mean, people people like to be part of something. Like we are social beings, so I think that we just need to find the right way, the right configuration. And I think just, yeah, the community building is, it is about people. And I think that sometimes we create these products with features, and we promise to kind of achieve this goal with those products, and we forget that the people are behind it, or that it needs to be driven by actual people. The product is just like a tool and a framework for the actual people inside of it.
You have yourself moved recently, like there's change happening in your life. You just had a children, and now you're thinking of exiting the company or selling it at least. Can you tell us about that, and what's the reality of being a solo founder and how priorities might change in life?
Sure, those are a lot of questions in one. um, Being a solo founder is really tough. It's good and it's bad. I mean, in some ways, I've heard that like a lot of companies fail because of founder conflicts, and that definitely doesn't happen when you're the only one like making the decisions, um, and driving things in the direction that you want them to go in. But at the same time, you end up playing every possible role at the same time. And when you launch a company, of course, you have to do everything yourself at the beginning because you don't have resources, and you need to grow and be able to acquire resources to hire people. And then when you want to hire people, you want to make sure that you are hiring the best people. Therefore, you try to actually learn how to do that role yourself so that you can actually ask the right questions and be able to see if that person is actually going to be able to fulfill the role that you need them to. So you end up like learning, just you become like a huge generalist where you just learn as much as possible, and then you slowly start to delegate, and step back a little bit. But as you grow and as you scale and have more employees, you also have more people to oversee. And so it's just this juggling act as a solo founder where you just have so many things, and it's super rewarding, but it's also just really stressful and difficult to navigate, I'd say. I don't know a period in my life where I grew so much so quickly. I mean, maybe becoming a mother is the same in that sense. I think they're comparable in the sense that you're just growing and changing and learning so much, so like out of necessity, because you want your child to survive and you want your business to grow and survive. And there's this like time limit, right? You kind of like have to learn before your kid becomes the next in the next stage how to accommodate it at that stage. And and yeah, I think like you said, ended up moving to a warmer, sunnier place, trying to have a slightly calmer life and a little bit more balance. And I had a baby, and really kind of gave me some perspective. I think all of us are trying to figure out like what drives us and what makes us happy, and what we really want to spend our time doing. Our lives are not that long, right? And we want to fill it with things that really make us feel good and feel useful. And I think for me, having a baby kind of really gave me a lot of perspective. And all of these small things I was so worried about in my company, for example, that were really stressing me out, just seemed insignificant when it came to like growing another human being. And the amount of connection and love you feel for someone that is now forever a part of you and a part of your life. So I think it's tough. I don't want to like I don't know, I don't want to further this kind of stereotype that like women, like I know that there's like a lot of people out there that want to know if founders are planning on having families because it makes them feel worried that their company isn't going to survive or something like that, because they're gonna focus more on their family. And I really don't think that's the case. I think actually I became a more efficient worker, knowing how to juggle many things when I became a mom. But I also think that some people realize that they're kind of bending over backwards for the wrong things when there are other things also in life that you should be working really hard for.
Right. Last but not least, I'll try to publish this pod as soon as possible to help you find someone for that company. What kind of buyer are you looking for?
So I am talking to companies that have communities or are based on communities that I think are not finding the right technical solution. I think there's a lot of community platforms out there, and we've had a lot of customers come our way who are like, oh, we need a platform that does this specific thing. And I think like every community is so different and needs something very specific, and every business needs something specific. So communities, people or businesses, communities that aren't finding that exact solution, by buying what we've built, they would have the ability to build on top of it. So that means they could completely customize what they're looking for. They can make it fit with their business model, with the type of members that they have. And alternatively, if somebody, for example, is offering a product that needs an add-on, like communities, for example, in EdTech, like a lot of workshop platforms, a lot of people came our way and were like, hey, I have this course published online, but I want to build a community around it, and my course platform doesn't have a community building feature. So I think companies that offer courses and different types of online education could also benefit from an add-on with community building around it.
Love it. Well, Mel, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today. Where can people find out more about you?
I'm on LinkedIn. Probably LinkedIn is the best place. Or you can visit us at panion.com and reach out through the website.
Yeah, and LinkedIn would be Melanie Aronson. So that is quite easy. Melanie Aronson on LinkedIn.